Hey everyone, welcome to the DarkCast. I'm your host, Jonathan Miley. It's the end of 2018 and I'm happy to be bringing you part 3 of 4 of our Games of the Year discussion. In this episode, I talked to 3 writers about 3 of the best games this year. In Section 1, I talked to Brian Tyler about Marvel's Spider-Man. In Section 2, I talked to Alan Kesinger about astro-bot Rescue Mission. And in Section 3, I talked to Mark Steighner about Red Dead Redemption 2. You can find timestamps for each section, as well as more information about the games we discuss in the show notes for this episode, which you can find on darkstation.com. There you can also find the DarkCast interview podcast, as well as video game reviews, previews, and features, including our writers' top 5 Game of the Year list for this year. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at darkstation_com, find us on Facebook, and email us at podcast@darkstation.com. As always, thank you so much for listening. Now on with the show. Welcome back to the DarkCast, everybody. I'm Jonathan Miley. Joining me is the illustrious Brian Tyler.
I like that. That makes me sound a lot more important than I am. I like that. Very nice. I always appreciate coming back on now because I get to feel special.
That's good. Everybody should feel special. But it's not Syndrome's special.
No.
Nobody's special. No, like everybody is truly
special. I like that.
In their own way. But we are here to talk about our games of the year, and so everybody on the show is kind of talking about one of the games off of their top 5. Brian, what are we talking about right now?
Well, I mean, as a reviewer, I do wield a some would say a power of some kind, and as we all know, with power comes at least some portion of responsibility. And so, with that, we talk about my number one game, and it happens to be your number one game, Marvel's Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
The greatest power with the greatest responsibility.
It's, Insomniac wielded their power very well.
Man, did they.
Very responsibly. The video game awards have happened. Mm-hmm. The wrong game got the award. I played God of War. It's not the game of the year. Like, I knew just a few hours into Spider-Man that unless some kind of crazy thing happened over the last few months
terribly
of the year,
wrong.
like some crazy guy got a big book that rewrote reality.
Yeah.
Like, short of that, Spider-Man was going to be my game of the year. It's just so good.
I don't. Yes, it absolutely is. When I reviewed it for the site, that was probably one of the easiest 5s that I've ever actually had to review. I knew exactly what needed to be said for that because I don't think there's any part of that game that really came up short. Sure. There are definitely some, getting it out of the way, there are some repetition stuff that you could say about the the various crimes going on in New York. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to go that far, that this is the probably the most crime-ridden New York possible. But at the same time, I counter that with Spider-Man's spider sense means he's always swinging into danger. So
sure.
He knows where that bad stuff is, and he's connected to the New York crime computer.
Right.
So,
and also, as far as the game goes, the game doesn't punish you in any way for not doing that stuff. Because I got tired pretty early on of that.
Yep.
But it's one of those things that I just kind of ignored.
The worst thing that happens is at some point you will get a J. Jonah Jameson broadcast where he interviews somebody who's like, hey, I was kidnapped and I heard Spider-Man was in the area and nothing happened. And J.J.
Oh, yeah.
Jameson is like, that's because he's a menace.
Yep.
And that's it. You're done.
So
swing and do what you want.
Exactly. But the game just kind of, a lot of games let you do whatever you want to in a way, but like I was able to play the game in a way that just made me really happy, which was to ignore crimes and find like backpacks and stupid shit like that all throughout the city. So I know some people felt like all the collectibles were kind of repetitive. Some of the crimes were repetitive. But I don't know. It was one of those things where like all the collectibles for me just made me feel like I was actually doing something while swinging around the city and not just dicking around and swinging around the city.
And I did that too. There was a lot of times where I was just like, I'm just going to swing over here.
And it also helps that the music is awesome. On top of just being good superhero music, I feel like it does a fantastic job of being Spider-Man music. There's something about like the way that the Danny Elfman's Batman music, like you feel the darkness, you feel Batman.
It completely defines that. Yes,
right. With John Williams' Superman music, like you feel like you're flying through the air.
It's so much so that it feels wrong when it's not there and there's a Superman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And with Spider-Man, like this is in my opinion, this is the best Spider-Man music we've had because there's something about listening to it that you feel kind of the ebb and flow of swinging up and down. Like you can just kind of feel that rhythm that is unlike any other Spider-Man music that I've heard. And having that kind of build up as you just start to swing from having finished a fight on a rooftop or whatever, is just, it's great. It's so good. I love the music.
Yeah.
But yeah, the great thing about all of the extra crap, you could call it, in Spider-Man is you don't have to do any of it.
Yeah, you don't.
You could just do the story missions, and those are great fun.
Yep.
I don't really have any criticisms of the game.
Yeah. They did a fantastic job of making the smaller missions feel just as important as the bigger ones, and the story, the pacing of it. It's once you kind of pass like it's not a real point of no return, because that doesn't come until the final fight itself.
Right.
But once there's a point, and I guess we could talk spoilers because this is Game of the Year stuff, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So once everything goes to hell at the prison and the Supermax, at that point, that's kind of like that was my, especially reviewing the game and then going back afterwards and playing like the Renew Game Plus. That was the point of demarcation where it felt wrong to do anything else but go after the supervillains. With that great power comes great responsibility, and that does feel wrong to kind of be doing when there's stuff out there you need to be stopping. When Ock and the rest of the Sinister Six are out there just doing bad. Yeah.
I will say the one thing that I realized that the game does really well, really only on my second playthrough, was that mechanically everybody talks about how the game makes you feel like Spider-Man. Like that was the big buzz phrase when the game came out. But I feel like narratively, it actually does a really good job, and a lot of that has to do with the way the side missions are done.
Yep.
Because Spider-Man is a very ground level hero. That's one of the things that's really fantastic about the movie. Homecoming. He's got the bike, and he's like, "Hey, who lost a bike?" And he's giving directions to the old lady, and
he very much say friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And the side missions really nail that home, whether it's finding lost college students or it's helping a bird watcher lady who sees some stuff going down in the park, or it's catching some pigeons. It really makes him feel grounded in that world. Yep. My biggest complaint from the whole game are the research stations. I hated every single one of them.
Yeah. I didn't.
Again, you only have to do one for the story mission. So I did it to myself, doing all of them. And so that's why I don't really hold it against the game, but I did not like them.
I appreciated that it was helping Harry, and I liked the story behind them.
Right.
I thought it truly like cheesy and hilarious that you go from kind of these like kind of almost like mundane spider chores around the city to suddenly becoming like an environmental warrior. And like, I gotta stop these smog clouds
by swinging through it.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Smog clouds
spot these. I gotta spot these schools of fish. And yeah, that it was dumb. Those were okay. I totally put those out of my mind. Those were really those are probably the weakest point as far as the writing and everything else goes too.
Right.
Just because the amount of different things they want you to do that Spidey, while a scientist, is still not really qualified to do. It's just really kind of silly. But it's anything to help Harry.
Going on with Spider-Man being a scientist, I really liked the approach that they took to this world, where Mary Jane is not a model or an actress, but she is a much more grounded person. She's the journalist. Peter Parker is a scientist, which I feel like makes so much more sense. Being a photographer works for a while, but
but his passion was especially in the books too. His passion was always science, and it was the photography that helped pay the bills through skill.
Right. Having that actually be his job, and doing this game 8 years in, not rehashing the same old origin story, I think was fantastic.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic game all around. The voice work, the music, the combat, the world, the graphics. Just truly stellar game from top to bottom.
Yeah, Peter's. I think they did a fantastic job with the character in that Peter Parker has always been kind of two minds, and one of those is really good at being Spider-Man, and the other one of those is really bad at being an adult. All of the stuff that goes along with being an adult, like eating at normal times, paying your rent, having things, bills are going to be late, but he is on the final payment of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is a superhero at the same time and is really good at doing that. I've always found kind of hilarious. Even to the point where Aunt May is just yes, number one, of course you can sleep on the couch. Number two, you're going to take this money I'm giving you because I know what you're doing. I know that you're that you're having trouble here and you're just not telling me, and you need to tell me.
Right.
Also, I think we would be remiss without actually talking about the newest canon Spider-Man, Spider Cop.
Spider Cop.
Yep.
Yes.
Who has been canonized in the comics itself. There is a fantastic panel where they actually have it's the Spider-Man from the PS4 game, and he is there with Miles Morales and another Spider-Man, and they are looking at a screen full of Spider-Men, including a T-Rex Spider-Man. And then in the upper right-hand corner of this screen is a Spider-Man with a mustache, glasses, and a cop hat. And Miles Morales goes, "How about this guy? He's a cop, some sort of grizzled veteran of the Force." And PS4 Spider-Man goes, "Spider Cop actually exists? I can't express how happy this makes me." So Spider Cop is a living, breathing Spider-Man somewhere out there in the multiverse. And we are all better for him being out there and doing his job.
Oh, that is so good. I just pulled that up. That is amazing.
Yep.
I love that so much. Also, just more heaps of praise on this game. The white spider suit that they made for this game has to be my all-time favorite spider suit.
It's such a great look.
To this point. I will switch out to another spider suit every now and then. I'll go a little Scarlet Spider, or I really like the white Spider 2099 suit.
Yep, I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that looks real sharp. And I'll wear some every now and then. I like the comic one where you're all cell shaded.
Yes.
It makes me really wish the game just had that. Even though the game is beautiful, like that suit is gorgeous. Yeah, but even as great as all the suits are, like I always after just a few minutes go back to the advanced suit because I love it so much.
Yes. 100%. They did a fantastic job with that suit. That suit looks better than anything else in that game.
Yeah.
Like that, I felt I throughout my original run, like I would try on different suits just to see what they were like, and then immediately go back to the suit, to the White Spider suit. I thought it just looks so great swinging. It looks so great doing everything that a spider does.
Yep.
I kind of was a little upset that they make you change for the last mission, and they don't outside of the power you get, it doesn't really make sense. But then I loved that when that suit gets ripped open, the White Spider suit is still underneath.
Yeah.
So he has two spider suits on.
Yep.
and I did appreciate that a lot.
But yeah, it's
also just a shout out to the guy who does Miles as well, because so there's the initial story when you meet him and. That goes on, and he does end up getting bit, and then there's the kind of stinger at the end where they both kind of jump up to the ceiling together, which is totally fantastic and well done. But there are throughout both DLCs so far, there are Miles randomly calls you while you are doing spider stuff to ask when you are going to train, and at one point during the second DLC, he calls and is like, so I fell off a bridge. And Peter's like, what do you mean you fell off a bridge? Well, I was trying to do what you do. And he goes, what did I tell you to stop? We will train together. Don't go jumping off bridges. What's wrong with you?
Oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah, they had. It's absolutely it is wonderful because now you know how well this character, this character, they did such a great job with this character that seeing him just put into different situations is fantastic. And that's what makes all of the best, that's what makes the event, the Marvel movies so great, is that they did a great job with character first and then put them into different situations so that could be the focus. And they're, obviously I cannot wait to see what they do with with Spider-Man 2. I just can't, because it will eventually get here, and my God, they don't have to change much.
No.
Yeah. That's the part that I do kind of dread as well, because it's they're going I guess they have to try and change something to kind of Arkham City, the Arkham Asylum, but at the same time what are you going to do? The swinging is perfect. You probably add some combat moves, I guess.
Right.
Don't put in people that I have to dodge twice against. Just that's all I ask. But yeah, no, that's
just good, man.
You were 100% correct when you said there was no better game that came out this year.
Nope, not at all. But one of the other things that we like to do on the show, or not the show, because this is the first time we've done this show, but on the site. Everybody does their top 5, and then at the top of their top 5 is their favorite game that they have played this year that didn't come out this year, because we all have bucket lists. We all play plenty of games that are not brand new right now. So what is that game for you this year?
Man, Total War Warhammer 2.
Okay.
I have 240 hours in it so far.
Holy God.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of time. It's there was DLC that came out twice this year. So earlier this year, they had the Rise of the Tomb Kings, which is great Egyptian themed skeleton warriors and all kinds of craziness. And you had to capture a black pyramid. It was really fantastic. And then probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, they had the Vampire Coast. Is just vampire pirates, which are nuts and undead and super crazy as well there too. So those are great. I've probably spent the last week and a half playing a Dark Elf campaign that I had trouble with them before. It ended up going in the right direction for me this time, and now I am 13 or 14 turns away from like finally sealing it up, and it's to the point where I do my turn in like 5 minutes, and then everything takes like another 5 to 10 minutes of me not doing anything for it to complete the rest and have the world do its thing, and then it comes back to my turn again. So we're definitely in the end game there. But yeah, no, I've spent a ungodly amount of time with this game this year, and I love every bit of it. I never ever thought I would get into an RTS, and with Total War Warhammer 1 did it for me, and 2 is just improved on that formula that they have. And I can't wait to see what else they keep releasing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, that does it for this segment of our DarkCast GoToCast 2018. We'll be back in just a moment with somebody else's pick for Game of the Year.
It won't be better than Spider-Man, but I'm sure it'll be fun.
Welcome back to the DarkCast. I'm Jonathan Miley. Joining me is Alan Kesinger. How are you doing, Alan?
Good, doing good. How about yourself, Jonathan?
I'm doing good. People are probably going to get really tired of hearing me say this, and they're going to get tired of hearing me say this, because I've said this many, many times, but I'm just really happy to be doing Game of the Year. I've been getting to talk to a bunch of really interesting people about games. You know, some of them I didn't know about, some of them I really want to play now. It's just, it's been fantastic.
It's always that's always like the best thing about Game of the Year, because I mean, it's impossible to play everything that comes out in the year, and it's always this sort of like juggling. Well, I kind of want to play this, but this seems interesting, but this seems like a better value for my dollar. But then again, people really talk about this thing, so like it's always great for a Game of the Year. It's like you know. It's really an opportunity to hear. It's like, oh, well, you know, people did play the stuff I did, and it sounds really great, so I'll check it out. And this is always a great time of the year, too, because everybody's doing a holiday sale, so you can get stuff really cheap.
Yep. Yeah, and just a little inside baseball. The way that we used to do Game of the Year podcast was it was a super, super long, like 1 or 2 take recording. And we would try to sit down, like 3 or 4 of us from the website, and we have a survey that we do at the end of the year, and we vote on, you know, various categories, just like a lot of websites. You know, they give best graphics, best, you know, whatever the case may be. And basically, we would go through that and talk about the runners-up and what won. But inevitably, especially you know, as just time went on, and kind of the reason that, you know, we've restructured the podcast and trying to get more people on is, you know, everybody's got lives. It's really hard to get people to sit down, you know, at the same time, you know, multiple people. And then also, especially with those podcasts, I mean, those, we could be sitting there for like 3 or 4 hours, and we did multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, we're not on the, I don't think we've ever been on the same level as like Giant Bomb, where they have like 6-hour podcasts. But
no.
You know.
But the problem with that is inevitably we would come across games that, like, even though we've got 4 people on there, none of those 4 people played that game that won, and we're just like, well, someone thought it was good. And so, like, I don't know, it's. We've done 3 kind of normal episodes so far this year, and I've been really happy with them, but I feel like Game of the Year has kind of been I don't want to say the fruition, but just a good example of kind of what I really want the DarkCast to be going forward, which is hearing from a bunch of different people and getting, you know, more points of views on video games. And it's just been a blast.
Yeah, this format has been working really well. I love it. You've been knocking it out of the park, Jonathan, for sure.
Well, thank you. But we're not just here to pat ourselves on the back. We're here to talk about video games.
Speak for yourself.
We're not just here to pat ourselves on the back.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure we didn't get any issues with the Skype recording here, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
But we're here to talk about some of our favorite games from 2018. What are we talking about right now, Alan?
We are talking about Astrobot Rescue Mission, which
Is that related to Astro Boy in any way?
No.
Okay.
Although that would be cool. That would be cool. No, this is this has nothing to do with the Osamu Tezuka character at all. But Astrobot Rescue Mission is kind of like an expansion of the little robot character, like the kind of on the slime mascot for the PlayStation 4, because we've seen these robots before through the Playroom. When the PS4 came out and they had that sound bar of a camera, of a PlayStation camera that came out. One of the things that you could do with it was play this platformer game, and it was very reminiscent of, I'll just come out and say it's very reminiscent of Mario, because you're collecting coins, you're going through these kind of 3D levels, and you're rescuing these other little tiny robots. And the whole thing's over like in 5 minutes. I mean, it's a very, very short level that now I kind of look at as a proof of concept, because Astrobot Rescue Mission is a kind of, maybe that's not the right term for it, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's a more like fleshed out, fully featured version of that. In that instead of one world, there are multiple worlds or multiple levels across different worlds, and you're still collecting coins. You're still trying to save your little robot companions, all within the kind of immersion that you get with PlayStation VR.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what all are... So I don't know very much about this game. I just, the Twitter exploded with people giving it praise. But I don't know... I don't know. I don't have a good idea for what this game is. It is, for whatever reason, it has, in the back of my head, me wanting to get a PSVR now. But
yeah. And,
if I were to get it, what would I be getting?
You'd essentially be getting what looks like, in 2018, and going forward, everything should be about breaking down walls, breaking down barriers. And this feels like Nintendo invited some of Sony Japan's people to the Mario Academy of Level Design for a free internship, a summer internship, to kind of, take a look at how Nintendo designs Mario levels, 3D Mario levels specifically, because as we saw with Odyssey and going back, Mario has, this is what you're getting is a handful of levels that are amazing. I mean, there hasn't been a platformer like this on the console since, I don't know, maybe Jak and Daxter, but it really feels like you're playing really good Mario style levels. And they're designed really well. There's some great puzzle elements to the different stages. One is kind of set entirely on this growing sort of tree that the level is more vertical than anything else. And you're just kind of interacting with the environment in fun ways. And, you're fighting a small collection of enemies that have a lot of personality. That's probably the best thing I can say for it, is this game has so much personality from a 3D platformer point of view, that it's charming, it's fun, it's cute, it's adorable. You play as the captain of this ship with all these little tiny robots, but you're kind of fancier than everybody else, just to let you know that you are indeed a kind of robot with standing. So you got a little bit of a cape, and he does all these kind of heroic poses. And as you're going through levels, generally the goal is to get to the end of the stage, but along the way, There are coins to collect, and more importantly, there are robots to rescue. Hence the name Rescue Mission. And it's fun coming across these little robots as they are either like in obvious places, or they're kind of tucked away behind breakable walls, or it's kind of like in the Rayman Legends and Origins, how you'd be walking along and then you'd know that one of the characters is nearby when you hear them say "help me," and then like you kind of try and find them like tucked away in not easy to find places. But these little robots, they're adorable. I mean, they do stuff like they're picking flowers, or they're just kind of like hanging out, or they're just doing fun, silly little things. I mean, it's cute. It's really cute. It's really charming. And it's one of those things where it looks like, oh, this is probably a kid's game. But as you get deeper into the game, it's easy to miss coins. It's easy to miss robots. And it encourages you to replay through the level and find the ones that you missed. This sort of like got to catch them all mentality to it. But also what you're getting is an exceptional use of immersive VR. So rather than being played from like a 2D platformer, you're actually taking control of of this other, I don't know, lack of a better term, it's a mom bot. You're taller, and there are moments where you'll be passing by mirrors or view screens, and you kind of see yourself as you're basically a PSVR headset with like a cone body holding a DualShock controller. And what you're doing is you're controlling your robot hero. So you're making it go forward, you're making it jump, you're doing all stuff like that. You're using gadgets that require the PlayStation controller. So like there's like a grapple hook that like you have to angle your controller up to get on the level of the ring that it can connect to, and then you're also guiding your hero robot as he walks across. Circus style across this tightrope, but you're also using it to, like, if you yank the controller back, you can pull away breakaway walls and stuff like that. But it's fun. It's interesting because as Captain Robot moves forward, you're moving forward with him, so you're always behind him. But you have the freedom of kind of looking around. I say that as I move my head. I don't know why I'm not on camera. But you're moving your head around. That way you can kind of like see underneath like, bridges or parts of the level that might be hiding something. So you can always lean forward or duck down and kind of catch stuff that you might miss. And I mean, it's great. It's just so surprising because I think a lot of VR, for the most part, is usually, oh, here's a first-person shooter, or here's a shooting gallery, or, here is some sort of first-person experience. Doing 3D platformers on the game's a little odd, but I think this and Moss show that like it can, like, immersive 3D platformers in virtual reality work pretty well. I love PlayStation VR, and for the longest time, I was like, well, I don't think there's, I tell people it's cool, but I wouldn't outright recommend it because there really wasn't anything that kind of sticks out as there's no killer app.
Right.
And astro-bot Rescue Mission is probably not a killer app. I mean, I wouldn't tell you to go spend $200 for a $30 piece of software, but it's a strong case for it. And this year alone, between Moss, Beat Saber, and astro-bot, as well as some other stuff I've reviewed for the site recently, it's gone from maybe to, well, actually no. I think there's a compelling argument to start thinking about maybe buying a PSVR. So
sure, I think that. I think astro-bot is just kind of the, I don't want to say the straw that breaks the camel's back because that's usually a negative connotation. But it's like critical mass is like starting to gain, where it seems like a viable platform to have, not just as a tech demo, but as something that you can actually enjoy titles with.
Absolutely, yeah, and I feel like at least 2018, some of the PSVR stuff that's come out has been pretty strong than it was last year. Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that we like to do on Dark Station with our top fives is shine the spotlight on a game that came out before this year, but we only just now got to play. So what is that game for you?
That game is Uncharted Lost Legacy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yep. I'll start with my hot take. I did not like Uncharted 4. It was not kind of what I wanted from an Uncharted game. And I think a lot of that had to do with the change in directors. I felt that Uncharted 4 lost its kind of pulpy spirit, and tried to go something that was like, that's the best way to say it, very Neil Druckmann.
Yes.
I think that the acclaim of Last of Us, and Naughty Dog making a very human kind of story, it kind of, I don't want to be mean, but infected the Uncharted series, and made made Uncharted 4 way more dramatic and than it needed to be.
So everything that you're saying right now is absolutely true, and that's like the reason that I liked Uncharted 4 more than the previous game.
I'm just saying, Uncharted 4, if Uncharted 4 had more Blue Yetis from Uncharted 2, it might have been a better game.
Ooh, that is okay, you lost me there.
I mean, but yeah, everything about Uncharted 4 I wasn't pleased with. The sort of like turning Nathan Drake into this sort of like emotionally impotent kind of guy who like is struggling with now having to be a civilian, down to the music. I mean, they didn't get Greg Edmonson to come back and do the score, and like that was a noticeable absence for me. So I walked away with from Uncharted 4 not being too thrilled with it. I mean, I think the only great thing about it was Sully, but let's face it, Sully is always the greatest thing about Uncharted.
That is true.
And so when I heard that they were doing this sort of like, offshoots, side story, Uncharted Lost Legacy, is like, I don't know. I don't know. But I forget how I came to it. I think I bought it cheap because it was holiday. But I don't know. I think I just decided to take a chance on it because, one, I like Chloe.
Mm-hmm.
I loved her in Uncharted 2, and I think she's a great character. Claudia Black is amazing as always. And I'm like, and it had the new character Nadine, which I kind of didn't really think too much of in Uncharted 4. And right from the get-go, when Chloe meets Nadine on the roof, and I'm like, okay, this could be cool. And then it gets to the portion of the game where it just kind of breaks out into this like open world stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is good. And just it was a combination of Nathan Drake not being in it, Sully not being in it, which is kind of a heartbreak, but just kind of framing the game around these two women who have amazing chemistry. Like, for a character who's only been in like one game, like to hear her bouncing off of Chloe, like you'd think that they were always in these games. I mean, like you'd think they were always together. And just like listening to them interact and talk to each other, it was amazing. It was great. I loved them. I loved like every waking moment with them was fantastic. Even when they're driving around and start ragging on Nathan Drake, it was great. I mean, I love listening to them talk. Yeah. Listening to them talk and bounce off each other. And then then it kind of, the story takes a turn, and then they kind of like are adversarial to each other, and then they come at just like the story part of it and the character was like, okay, this is what Uncharted 4 should have been. It should have said, I mean, we had already said goodbye to Nathan and Elena in Uncharted 3. That ended perfectly fine. And like this is what Uncharted 4 should have been, because it's a great opportunity to leave the old characters behind and do stuff with the newer ones or pre-existing ones in an adventure that was really fun and didn't have, and because it was like a smaller, shorter experience, it didn't have the problems that I had with Uncharted 4, which I think it got too far up its own ass with the exploration stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And like, it just wasn't fun.
Okay, so I'm not going to argue with you about Uncharted 4, but
yes,
it is a much more serious and somber game. There are, there's still cracking jokes and stuff like that, but it doesn't have the overall lighthearted tone.
Right.
That even like the third one wasn't nearly as lighthearted as the first two.
You're right. Yeah.
I would say the great thing about I guess the thing that really endears Uncharted 4 to me is that there is a lot less combat, and the combat is far superior to that which is in the first three games, because I still hold to the assessment that shooting things in Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 sucks.
Oh, especially one.
Especially one. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The thing that is fun about those games is when you're not shooting things and people are talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the thing that I liked about 4 was that it gave it a lot more space for people to talk, basically. But what Uncharted Lost Legacy does is it takes the original vision of Uncharted 1, and it actually succeeds. It has a pulpy, fun story where, you've got your hero that's in it for the treasure that ultimately has to save the world. But on this case, it's like a much smaller scale. You're saving a city, not the entire world from like a plague or whatever the case may be. It just wholly abandons any supernatural stuff. There's no zombies that you're fighting that require 7 times as many bullets. There's nothing like that. It has the greater space for talking like Uncharted 4 does, but because it's more condensed, it's not like it feels proportional to the amount of shooting that you're doing. Yeah. And at the time that I played Lost Legacy, I went through like a 2-year span where I really hated everything that was open world because I just got really tired of it. But Lost Legacy was this super refreshing experience because there's only one level that's open world, and that world is actually very small. It's not huge, and there's only like a handful of things to do. There's like 3 kind of puzzle areas that you have to go through, I think, maybe 4. And there's these little combat like encampments that you can go through. And there's a few little collectibles. And the thing that I loved about the collectibles in that open world is that it unlocks an in-game thing that is actually usable in-game. Like, it gives you something that is useful. It's not just, oh, you got the achievement for collecting 400 Riddler trophies. No, there's like 12 of these little tokens. You get them, and now you have a relic that shows you, or not shows you, but it vibrates the PlayStation controller when you're near other relics. And so it makes it a mechanically useful tool. And I was like, that is so wonderful. And then you just keep playing the game like normal. I'm totally behind your love of Uncharted Lost Legacy. Like I said, I think that it is the first game to truly succeed on what Uncharted 1 tried to do. Yeah. So, but any final thoughts about astro-bot or Uncharted Lost Legacy?
Uncharted,
or as I like to call it, Uncharted Chloe Strikes Back.
Yes, absolutely. That's in fact what it should be called from now on. No, Uncharted Lost Legacy is a fantastic kind of continuation of that series. Who knows what Naughty Dog's going to do with it in the future, but again, me personally wasn't a fan of Uncharted 4. Didn't quite leave me with the sort of kind of like way I wanted to close out that series if that is to happen. But Lost Legacy bounced me back, and now I want more of it. I would definitely like more games with Chloe and Nadine. But as for Astrobot, again, talk to me last year, and I would have said, PSVR is cool. There's probably not a whole lot of stuff out for it to justify the cost. Because, again, you're having to pay for the headset, the camera, and then you have to buy the Move one separately, which is kind of lame. But this year, on top of Astrobot, there have been some really, it's been making some great strides. It's been making some fun strides. There's fun experiences for it. But Astrobot, man, that is, if we were doing a PSVR game of the year, that would be it, hands down. It's fun. It's charming. It belies a challenge that's not readily apparent, given its sort of like jovial, childlike whimsy. But it does well by the VR technology, and it's just fun. Like there are a lot of games this year where it's like Spider-Man is like, it excels at recreating the experience of being a superhero, or Red Dead Redemption 2 makes you kind of like it kind of recreates the experience of being in America in the 1800s. But Astrobot, it's just fun. It's just fun. That's like, there's no deep meaning behind it. There's nothing to glean from its from its design. It's just fun. And if that's what you're looking for, especially in the PSVR, but just looking for something fun to play, you can't go wrong with Astrobot. It's fantastic. It's gonna stay with you, and it's gonna impress you, and then it's gonna stay with you, and you're gonna be like me and constantly thinking about it and how badly you want a little Captain Astrobot figure to have on your desk to look at you and like cheer you on, and it's just fun. It's just fun. Like I say that from the bottom of my heart. It's just fun.
All right, well, that does it for this section of our Games of the Year discussion. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, Alan,
absolutely,
and talking about so much stuff. Yeah. I don't know what is actually going to be in this conversation once I'm done editing it, but there was a lot. Yeah. And
I like to leave the people who record me with lots of material.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right, and I look forward to talking to you more in 2019.
Yep, sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to the DarkCast. I'm Jonathan Miley. Joining me today is Mark, and I feel like I messed up your name last time we talked. It's been 2 years.
That's true.
Steighner?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, okay. Whew. I wanted to say Steinger at first, and I was like, no, that's not right.
No,
I got it wrong last time.
No, you did good. That was good. I'm impressed.
Well, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Jonathan. Good. I'm doing great. Doing really well.
I'm glad to hear that. It's the end of the year. We're talking about some of our favorite games released in 2018. What are we talking about today?
Well, apparently today we are talking about Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm sort of surprised nobody has talked about it yet.
Well, that's so, I don't know. Some of these games are just so big. I wonder if some people just kind of don't want to talk about them because there's so many ways that you can talk about them. And there's, like, we could probably have an hour-long discussion just on God of War and just on Red Dead.
Oh, for sure.
But we're not going to. I mean, we may. It's just that's not what will end up in the podcast.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, well, Red Dead was my top game of the year, but I would not argue that it's the best game of the year, objectively speaking. But it was my top game.
Sure. Yeah, that's always an interesting kind of quandary when you're making this list of, how does something earn kind of your top game of the year? Is it what you think is objectively the best? Is it your favorite? Is it there's so many ways that you can kind of answer that question. But there have been a lot of huge games released this year. And I bounced off of Red Dead because I just got exhausted by the game. It's not anything that the game did wrong per se. It's just that everything takes time. Everything requires you to be very deliberate about it. There aren't a whole lot of shortcuts to the game, and I got tired of what felt like work.
Right. Well, I think that actually cuts to the heart of why it's either great or not great, depending on who you are. I think that Rockstar absolutely committed, which is one of the reasons I love it, is that they absolutely committed to whatever their vision was, which was that slow pace, that immersive world, no shortcuts, everything being deliberate, and it was like, take it or leave it. This is what we want to do. And I think that was great. That's one of the things that I love about it. I happen to really like the pace of it. Mm-hmm. I think it's very relaxing, and I just absolutely love being in that world, whether I'm doing anything in it or not, other than just existing in it. One of the things I said in my end of the year wrap-up was that many times I tried to will myself, through the screen to be in that world. It just appealed to me so much. So, I think it's one of those things that you like it or you don't. But I think they did what they wanted to do.
Absolutely. And I, on my part with playing the game, I felt like I was really connecting with its pace in the early parts of the game, especially in Valentine, where you're kind of just in and around that town for like a whole chapter almost. But then in Chapter 3, I believe, is when you move down near Saint Denis. Mm-hmm. And like at that point, the world just kind of opens up to you, where you could have gone pretty much anywhere if you wanted to, but the game's not requiring you to go anywhere else until Chapter 3, really. And then it's so much bigger. And so when the game felt smaller, the slow pace felt right. But then when I've got this objective that I don't know how long it's going to take me, but it feels like it's going to take me half an hour to get to it. I just sit there and go, I feel like I could be more productive, which is a ridiculous thing to think with video games. But I could get more accomplished in this other game in the same amount of time. And I feel like it would just require too much effort to, do X.
Right. I guess I think what happened with me is I got to that Chapter 3 point, and I pretty much stopped doing the side quests or the stranger, stories, and I just mainlined the main story, just because it starts to pick up momentum about then, and so I really wanted to see that through, knowing that at the end of the game I'd go back and free roam and pick up all those missing pieces, which what I'm doing now. But yeah, that's that's understandable. Again, the idea of accomplishing something in a video game is, when you think about it, kind of an odd. It's one of the reasons that I always had trouble with MMOs. Is I always had this existential dilemma when you put so many hours in and it would not end, and you just realize you put all those hours into something that was never really going to ever end. So I had to stop playing MMOs. But there's sort of the same feel about Red Dead in a way. Mm-hmm. So I assume we're not doing any spoilers here, right? We're going to try to avoid that.
We've done some light spoilers.
So we won't talk about the end part where Geralt of Witcher comes in and invades the. No, we won't talk about that part. Okay.
I'm going to put the podcast on hold. I'll be back in a few hours.
I did not see that coming. I tell you, it was a real surprise. So I would say one of the things, as I said, I love about Red Dead 2 is that open world. I think it's the best open world ever made. You know, in terms of the environments, the lighting, the design, the balance of, things that you're going to run into to do versus just free roaming and exploration. I mean, there's just such incredible beauty around every corner. I remember I came across some little river and there was a rainbow coming out of the river, and I thought I'd never seen that in a game before, really, especially looking so real. It's just really inviting kind of a place. Maybe it's because I live in the Northwest and the geography is kind of similar, but I could just sit there and watch the daylight shift and watch the animals run by. And the characters are on the whole really well written, and they're all excellently voiced. Sometimes they veer into the Western cliche. It's kind of hard not to do that if you're in that genre, but great characters. Arthur's an interesting guy, and of course Dutch from the old game is an interesting guy, and I think that Rockstar really improved on their formula quite a bit. I think did you play the first Red Dead, I assume?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And which was really just GTA with horses. They didn't change their formula all that much, but I think they really evolved it in the second Red Dead. They really mixed things up quite a bit. There's been a lot of complaints about some of the characters being kind of cliche and that there's not enough to do and it's very slow. And again, those are all deliberate choices, and you like it or you don't like it. I wouldn't say, I guess my biggest problem with it is if you're trying to play Arthur as a good guy, and I don't know if you've gone good or evil. My goal was to play him as the best man I could. It subverts that, and it takes away your agency almost all the time at the end of missions where you have to have a gunfight, and there's just no way to play that straight. You have to do what the game tells you to do.
Right.
So if you built him up as being, this paragon of virtue, you can't follow through with that. And I guess there's a theme of his life being bigger than his choices or something. But I wish that was a little different.
Sure. I think one of the things that the game does pretty well, though, as opposed to Red Dead 1 and especially GTA 4, was you have this character that's constantly talking about trying to be good and trying to be better and have this, more virtuous life and whatnot, and then you go murder like 75 people in a mission. There's this huge disconnect. I mean, that's right. I'm pretty sure GTA 4 is when the whole Ludo narrative disconnect got really popular.
Yeah.
And at least Arthur is not constantly claiming to try to be either good or better.
The other thing that people complain about Red Dead being so long, it's a 70-hour game and da-da-da. I mean, Dragon Quest XI, which is another game that I reviewed, endless JRPG. I mean, that was easily 100 hours. And far less, I mean, it was a great game with really interesting characters also, but far less variety, and all these games are really long. So I'm not sure if the length is really the issue. I think it's more like the pacing.
Yeah, I think it's the perceived length, not really the actual length. And you mentioned people complaining about there being not enough to do. But I think, again, that just has to do with the way the pacing goes. There's a video on YouTube that I saw recently, and I don't remember who did it. But basically, the guy was talking about how Red Dead actually doubles the amount of time it takes for events to trigger from most other games. So basically, if you play The Witcher or you play Assassin's Creed Odyssey or something like that, basically if you just run in one direction, it takes 20 to 30 seconds for you to come across something of note, whether it's you get attacked by wolves, you find an interactable object that's a house, somebody comes off screen and is requesting your help for something, like any number of things. Right. It can vary widely on what those objects of interest are, but basically it takes 20 to 30 seconds for you if you just run in one direction to encounter one. And in Red Dead, it takes, I want to say, like 40 seconds to a minute if you just run in one direction to encounter something like that. So the world just feels more expansive, which in a lot of ways I feel like it would have to with going for the Wild Wild West vibe.
Yeah. Well, there's a ridiculous amount of wildlife running around, though.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, of course, there's always something to look at. There might not always be somebody to talk to or to do. So I guess, it depends. What else I wanted to talk about here? Oh, I think the sense of humor is great. I think it's toned down quite a bit from GTA or the first, Red Dead. I think there's some really quirky, interesting, side missions and characters that you run across. And again, I don't know what you've seen and done yet.
The only problem that I've really had as far as side quests in the game is it's interesting because it's a weird thing to complain about, because in Red Dead 1 you would constantly come across like a wagon that was pulled off to the side, and there's a lady who's calling out for help, and it was actually either someone who needed help or it was an ambush, and bandits would come out and attack you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not actually that memorable. The kind of events where people just randomly, you hear somebody off in the woods crying out for help, they actually make these very memorable moments where you'll have a guy that was bitten by a snake, and then,
Right.
you save him. Hours later, you're in town, you meet him again, he buys you a gun.
Right.
Well, the same thing after that will happen down in Rhodes, where like it was almost the same dialogue, but it was slightly different. So I know it wasn't just an exact repeat. But I met another guy who was bitten by a snake, and I found him later in Rhodes, and he that shop didn't sell guns, so I had to buy something else in there, and I think I bought a suit or something like that. I've found two different people that are trapped up in a tree that a mountain lion is attacking them. I found two poor women that their horse died and fell on them, and I had to take them back. And both of them had completely different dialogue while I was riding back to their town to take them home. But it's really odd because they create these really wonderful moments that feel unique, but then when you encounter almost the exact same moment again hours later, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
Right. I guess thinking about that, though, they don't know. There's no way of knowing which of those situations you're going to actually pay attention to, right?
Sure.
So, I suppose if you're obsessive about helping absolutely everyone, you'd probably get a repeat of that. But
yeah, that's what I do.
There's a good chance you're just. Yeah, I did too. And actually, I called out and greeted everyone I met. But you might just ignore it, and you'd never get that payoff. So,
Sure.
The other thing big thing for me, and I wrote about this. I don't know if you read the little essay I did on the site about westerns in general, some
I haven't
contemporary
yet, but...
westerns. What I think, I think Red Dead has this interesting allegory, and I don't know if it's intentional or if it's coincidental, or it was under development for 6 years, and I don't know how much the story changed as they were developing it, but it feels to me like you have this story of a leader who has no moral compass and the inability to tell the truth. Now, I'm not saying that mirrors contemporary events, but it sure...
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but it just feels like, here you have a guy who's, espousing himself as this magnificent leader who can't tell the truth, who lies about everything, who has a increasingly, detached moral compass. And it just, to me, the game's kind of about, lack of leadership and the ability of having a center. So as you play through the game, of course, no surprise. Dutch kind of spirals more and more out of control.
Sure.
And it just feels that idea, intentional or not, feels pretty relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that may be a stretch. It might not really be that, but I wonder. I'd be curious.
Yeah, whether it was intended to be there or not doesn't negate whether or not it's actually there. So
Right. I mean, there are themes that are bigger than history, that are relevant anytime. So I thought that aspect of it was pretty interesting. I think the idea of portraying the West, like in the first game, portraying the West in the time of transition from being untamed to being tamed, and the idea of the American dream being tamed is pretty interesting and doesn't get explored in games very often. And they do a really good job of that. They're a little heavy-handed with the things for the Native Americans, and I don't know if you've encountered those characters yet. There's rainfalls and eagle flies, and you have a choice of helping them, but they do figure in pretty prominently near the end. And there's the leader, the Indian leader, of course, is a surrogate father for Arthur, just like Dutch was, in kind of a different way. And that's an interesting relationship. But then there's a whole thing about the oil companies coming in and destroying the land, and it's a little on the nose in terms of their storytelling with that, but that stuff is there and pretty interesting.
Great. Well, any final thoughts about Red Dead before we talk about your pick?
I would encourage everybody, no matter how long it takes, to see the payoff at the end and play through.
Okay.
Just chip away at it every once in a while, and it'll eventually get there. But I think the ending is worth it. The ending of the first Red Dead was great, and I think it's equally good in this one too. Anyway.
Well, what is your pick for your favorite game released before 2018, but you just now played in?
Yeah, well, I'm always like reviewing like 4 titles for the site, so or 6 or something ridiculous number of things in rotation. So I don't really have time to go back. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I've gone back to, but I haven't finished. I went back to Alien Isolation, which I never finished before, just because there was a couple other games that sort of referenced that, and I wanted to remember. I went back to Origins, to AC Origins, which I never finished. I picked up Monster Hunter Generations on Switch, which I haven't played too much of. I reviewed Dark Souls on Switch, and I have 3,000 plus hours on the Souls game, so it's not really something I hadn't done before, but I played through that again on the Switch. I went back to Darksiders, the original, after the debacle of Darksiders 3, which I didn't buy, thank goodness. I'm glad. That looked promising.
It did.
It's too bad. You didn't buy it, did you?
No.
I picked up Until Dawn on PS4 when it was free. I had never played that. Yeah, so I haven't finished any of those old things, but I got to finish Odyssey. I'm not quite done with that. I love that game too. And I want to play through God of War again.
Sure.
Because it's not that long. I mean, it's manageable.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, sorry, I don't have one thing.
No problem.
But I do have 5 that I'm writing up for the site now, so I'm plenty busy.
Well, excellent. Mark, thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting about Red Dead Redemption 2 and a whole bunch of other stuff that it sounds like you need to get back to.
Yeah.
And I look forward to talking to you more in 2019.
All right. Well, have a happy new year, and best of luck with all the recording and the rest of the shows.
Thank you very much. I'll need it. Well, that does it for part 3 of our Games of the Year discussion. Thank you so much for listening. You can find more info about the games we discussed in the show notes to this episode, which you can find on darkstation.com. Be sure to check out our writers' top 5 Game of the Year list on the site as well. You can also subscribe to the show on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at darkstation_com, find us on Facebook, and email us at podcast@darkstation.com. For Brian Tyler, Alan Kesinger, and Mark Steighner, I'm Jonathan Miley. Thanks again, and until next time, have a good one.